absolutely amazing. People who devote their life and many times risk their lives to promote love and peace and integrity and ethical leadership across the world. It was great to see our former president, Jimmy Carter, in that group, too. I love the applause for that. Yeah. For those of you who were with us earlier, please, before we get started, join me in thanking our entertainers one more time who volunteered their time and talent today. They're off on the side. We do want to let you know, if you have questions for the elders, there's only one way, well, two ways, but one method that you can get your questions before them today. And that is you have to submit them through Facebook or Twitter using the hashtag PeaceHI for Hawaii. So that's the # or hashtag PeaceHI. Questions will only be submitted or accepted through Facebook or Twitter. So if you're here and you don't Facebook or Twitter, then cozy up to someone next to you who has it and tell them to type in your question. At this time, as we get our wonderful afternoon program underway, please join me in welcoming President and CEO of the Hawaii Community Foundation, Kelvin Takeda.
Wow, welcome. You know, each day, headlines demonstrate the daily strifes in places like Gaza, Syria, Ukraine. Nearly every week, we hear another crisis resulting from issues like climate change, human rights violations, and refugee crises. And the need for solutions have never been greater. And the challenge for us, individually and collectively, is embodied in the question, what can I do? What can we do? When the Hawaii Community Foundation started the Pillars of Peace program in 2012, we hoped to inspire our community to practice compassion, mindfulness, and justice. We have been encouraged by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to advance peace through the power of aloha, and reminded by Aung San Suu Kyi that peace takes courage and compassion. And this year, the elders would encourage you to become part of the solution by being part of the global community. The Pillars of Peace Hawaii program would not be possible without the generous support of two individuals, Pam and Pierre Midyar, and I want you to join me in thanking them for their inspiration, their support, and their commitment to making Hawaii this great place to practice peace and to encourage us all to learn from people like the elders. Pierre is going to introduce the elders, and I wanted to introduce Pierre to all of you who haven't had a chance to meet him. Most of you know Pierre is the founder of eBay. Started in 1995, it has grown to be one of the world's largest online marketplaces. Most recently, the Midyars are known for their work in philanthropy. In the past decade alone, he and his wife Pam have committed more than $1 billion to philanthropic causes internationally, nationally, and locally. And in recognition of the impact they have created, they were awarded the prestigious Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy in 2011. Their work centers around the belief that providing opportunity for people will lead to a positive change in our own lives, our community, and the world. In addition to his philanthropic work, Pierre recently started First Look Media, a news organization dedicated to reimagining journalism in the digital age. He is also the CEO and publisher of Honolulu Civil Beat, a local news service that encourages greater civic participation through media. But more than the dollars, it's the personal commitment to making the world a better place. Their personal encouragement and leadership and inspiration that they provide to so many that makes them such special people. They walk the talk. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Pierre Midyar.
Good afternoon. It's a great honor to be here today and to share the stage with our special guests. I want to thank the Hawaii Community Foundation for sustaining the work of the Pillars of Peace program. We've been blessed to host respected peace leaders from around the world, and this year's program is no exception. We're honored to be hearing from 3 members of the elders. In 2007, faced with ongoing global conflicts and struggles for peace and justice, President Nelson Mandela and a small group of thinkers had the wisdom and foresight to create the elders. Their vision was to bring together an independent group of global leaders who could use their influence, experience, and wisdom to advance peace and understanding around the world. Membership in this group is not given lightly, nor is it bestowed for honor. Elders have spent much of their life and career boldly standing up to forces that prevent peace and fighting for justice and human rights. It was also President Mandela's vision that elders no longer hold public office so that they're free to act as strong and independent voices, speaking out where others may stay silent. The elders are not just global leaders, they're social revolutionaries. They are change makers. They are pioneering in their work, and they are fearless in their resolve. Together, they are the makers of peace who have worked to end conflict around the world. They are the builders of peace who have taught us the value of forgiveness and the importance of compassion. And they've transformed their own countries by leading with their hearts and their minds, by fighting for social justice, by empowering women, and by pursuing nonviolent struggle as a way to make the world a better, more just, and inclusive place. To hear from just one of these elders would be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But to hear from 3 of them today is truly special. In their own right, each has achieved far more in their lives than most can imagine. Together, their work and impact is staggering. It's not an overstatement to say that their work has touched millions of lives and given people the courage and freedom to inspire others. Our first elder is Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland. In 1981, at age 41, Prime Minister Brundtland became not just Norway's first female prime minister, but also the country's youngest. An incredibly popular leader who held 3 terms, she has long been a champion for human rights. During her career, Prime Minister Brundtland, also a trained physician, has promoted health as a human right, served as Director General of the World Health Organization, and championed sustainable development through her leadership at the Brundtland Commission and her current role as United Nations Special Envoy on Climate Change. Few people have had as great an impact on the world in such a wide variety of areas as Prime Minister Brundtland. She currently serves as Deputy Chair of the Elders. Our second elder, Hina Jalani, has stood up to intimidation, death threats, imprisonment, and murder attempts while working for democracy and women's rights in her country of Pakistan and around the world. She is known for her saying, "If you see injustice, you have to speak out against it. Otherwise, you are in no position to complain." Ms. Jalani began a long career of speaking out by founding Pakistan's first all-women law firm, the country's first legal aid center, a shelter providing legal counsel and support to women, and helping to create the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan. Ms. Jalani was the first special representative of the United Nations Secretary General on Human Rights Defenders, and she was also appointed advocate of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. That's just a short list of this remarkable person's accomplishments. She embodies the truth that one person can make a difference in the world. And in her case, she's made several lifetimes worth of difference. Our last elder needs little introduction. A founding member of the elders and its former chair, Archbishop Desmond Tutu has an ability to speak with such clarity, conviction, and compassion that he has become one of the most loved and respected leaders of our time. With a background in teaching and theology, Archbishop Tutu was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 for his work in the struggle against apartheid. In 1986, he was appointed Archbishop of Cape Town and, at the request of President Nelson Mandela, later served as chair of South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It was that model of truth, reconciliation, and forgiveness that would help heal apartheid-era atrocities. He is regarded not just as South Africa's moral conscience, but as a moral compass for us all. And finally, we're joined by our moderator, Leslie Wilcox. A familiar presence both on and off camera, Leslie was born and raised in Hawaii and started her career at the Honolulu Star-Bulletin. For the past 7 years, Leslie has skillfully guided our local PBS station as its CEO and has remained a driving force in the community. She still can be seen weekly on the PBS program Long Story Short. Leslie has interviewed 3 presidents, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Aung San Suu Kyi, and countless others. Please join me in welcoming our guests. They're on their way.
Yeah, they're sitting around chatting.
Here they come.
Sorry, it's just me. Pierre, they're on the way.
I'm so interested in
It's a pregnant pause for suspense.
Alvin Sachs was in the U.S. just before apartheid ended. He and I were doing a joint teaching course.
I did see them all just a few minutes ago. So I'm pretty sure they're in the building.
I think they went for a joyride around Waikiki for a moment.
This is dangerous. It's a little dangerous. Yeah.
Aloha kako, everyone. So glad you're here, and we are so glad you're here. Do you know this is the final official speaking engagement of your trip?
Yeah.
And we're sorry to see you go. Tell me, have you had time in between events to explore and enjoy Hawaii a little?
No.
Oh. Okay, well, then I'm so glad that you've been to Bishop Museum and Iolani Palace, and you've talked to many leaders in the community and emerging leaders and students. And Pillars of Peace is a cultural program, a cultural exchange.
Yes.
Tell me, I would like to ask each of you the same question, and then after that we can do a conversational format. But just for this first time, and I'll start with you, Prime Minister Brundtland, is there any moment, any encounter, any insight, any observation from Hawaii that you're going to be taking back to your international work?
Well, maybe, I mean, to the international work, to me personally, I would rather say that the girls who were dancing here, that's what really will stick forever in my mind and art.
What about that? What about the hula?
Well, they were just so beautiful, so wonderful the way they did this, and the happiness that they conveyed, you know. it was beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. Archbishop?
It's something that I have encountered in many another setting, meeting with the young people and being aware of their eagerness. I'm cheating a little bit because I saw somebody showed us some of the reactions of the young people. And I'm just thrilled that the young people here are like the young people that I met on semester C in their eagerness to see a better world.
Thank you. Ms. Gilani?
You know, coming from a place where people are so divided and there are so many reasons to hate each other that they find, it seems so refreshing to be amongst people who enjoy their diversity, who celebrate their diversity. I think it's so precious. I really, really feel that this is so precious that you must guard it.
Thank you. I should say before we go on, that the elders who are here and their colleagues, they don't claim to have all the answers. And the purpose of our conversation here is to be more mindful and be more compassionate and perhaps encourage everyone to be more involved locally and globally. So having said that, ready for some questions? Ready to chat? Let's start with Ms. Gilani. What one action can people in our audience, anyone within our hearing, take as individuals in Hawaii to further peace in the world?
I don't know, Leslie, if I can point out one action, but one thing that I would certainly say is you either be engaged or don't complain.
I think that's, I think there's a local version of that. What is it? No grumble, be humble. But you truly do believe that an individual can make a difference in the world?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't say that things are wrong, but it's somebody else's responsibility to correct it. It is all our responsibility because what is wrong is also something that we've all contributed to.
Yeah, leadership is not a matter of title, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Prime Minister, I'm just really curious to know this. You're in this role you have now. You're not in public office as you were, and you don't represent a specific country or political system or faith. Is there something you always wanted to say to an audience that you never could when you were in office?
Oh. You know, in a way, I think I have always been more outspoken than most other politicians. So all the way, I used to say things that people were surprised I dared to say. So I don't know that I have covered up a number of things that, you know, that I could now freely say.
And you must have paid politically for saying what you really thought at times, right?
Well, it happens, but then some people also admire that you are saying what you're thinking. So it's not, you know, in the political arena, it's not like everybody nods to the same thing and everybody shakes their head on the same. People are listening to their leaders, and they appreciate that they see that what they say comes from their heart. And people can do that even if they disagree with my opinion, you know. This is also a question of sharing a responsible leadership with others in a democracy where people can form their opinions, and they can also judge people based on their values, their personality, and they can disagree without disliking, too.
That sounds very utopian, but it happens.
No, it happens, yes.
Archbishop, all of the world's religions preach a message of peace, and yet and yet religion seems to be a catalyst for discord and for violence. Why is that, and what role do you see religion playing in the future?
Kofi Annan, just before he stepped down, convened or had convened a group that was called the High Level
Panel.
Group. What?
No, panel?
All right, panel.
He usually
I think you are always right. We met high level panel.
Yeah, you see? Yeah.
We met in different parts of the world, and you had Jews, Muslims, you name it, and we had the group there. And you know something? At the end of 2 years, after we sat together, coming from all those different perspectives, we were able to produce a unanimous report. And we handed it over to Kofi in Istanbul. And he said, it is not the religions, the faiths that are a problem. The problem is the faithful. The faithful. Because it is amazing. I mean, the level of agreement that you have. Because just look at what's happened in Northern Ireland. It's not Christians against pagans. It's Christian against Christian. And when you look at the teachings of their churches, nowhere do they say it's good to kill. There's no faith that says that.
And yet that's the history of the world, isn't it, in many, many parts of the world?
It is precisely, yes, it is. But that's the point, that we come and we put our own interpretations.
I see. Miss Gilani, this is true of each of you. Each of you has this unrelenting capacity for outrage, and you've had this fire in your heart for most of your lives. And I know you're aware of far more than we are, of some of the atrocities in the world and individual stories as well as systemic problems. To still have the outrage and still be doing the work you're doing and yet be a proponent of peace, how do you manage that internal balance, that tension, outrage? That kind of connotes emotion and anger, and how do you do that?
I've learned, frankly, to control it because I've had to over the years. But the anger that I talk about and the outrage that I talk about is not really in any way contradictory to the desire for peace. This is outrage at trends that make it impossible to achieve the goal of peace anyway. And I think that all of us share this, to use a very strong word, but my English is not so good, just an aversion to injustice. And if you don't have that aversion, then you will not have the motivation to work against it. The degree to which you dislike a thing makes you move in order to remove it. So I think that's what I mean by outrage. That tendency to be outraged, especially when you're a young activist, is very essential, because that is which brings you to take action and then ultimately be at peace with yourself, not because you have achieved what you want to, but because you are comfortable with your own conscience.
Prime Minister, can we have peace as we continually build larger, bigger, more sophisticated weapons of war? We put more and more money into making sure that we can kill people several times over?
No, the whole spiraling of both weapons in general and specifically nuclear weapons, has been a very bad and dangerous trend over many decades now. However, having said that, also we saw in the 80s and 90s that then the US and Soviet Union, both of them leading powers in the nuclear race, that they did agree to stop and to start pull down. So, however, that process has not gone further enough. And then you have proliferation of nuclear material, nuclear weapons in other parts of the world. And that whole spiral is a danger to humanity, great risk. Now, the other part of the whole question, of course, is the immense use of resources that go into this damaging trend in any case. So, yes, the need to lower the amount of and the level of weaponry is obvious. But, there are also other good stories in the picture. For instance, landmines. Unbelievably, within a few years, it was possible to have the world, really say no to landmines.
Now, what do you think that...
So this again is an example that you could inspire across the world sufficient voices that said no.
Is there a template to how that happened? Yeah. Can that be used for another issue in this context?
Well, why it happened was certainly a number of people with determination and with passion that did not give up but continued speaking out and working on it together until they prevailed.
You mean individuals?
Individuals right. And organizations, both. Okay. Yeah.
By the way, you can't see this, but I got to give props to the captioner. Really good live work there behind you, so that people can read what you're saying. You sound good in print too. About this time, we'd like to start taking questions from those who are here in our auditorium, and also people watching this on live stream. A reminder that questions can be submitted via Facebook or Twitter using hashtag PeaceHI. So the hash mark and then PeaceHI. Just wherever you are, please send us some questions. We do have some questions that have already come in, and I'd like to start with them, if I might. The first one is specifically for Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu from Jennifer Leoiki Drino. And she says, you present a serious message and yet bring it with beautiful laughter. What is the source of your incredible humor?
I think part of it is having to survive with my wife and children. I mean, Leah has a bumper sticker or something that says, you are entitled to your wrong opinion. And she puts that in our bedroom. So I have to stand up for my rights. No, but it is more seriously. It is that there are fantastic people in the world who will get the credit post-mortem. I know that I am being prayed for. I know that there are many, many people who uphold me. And I mean, I'm sometimes surprised at how smart I turn out. And it isn't, actually, seriously, it isn't my achievement. I believe that old lady in a village church who says, God, help him. She doesn't know maybe which way. And because she said so, I get to be inspired. And I have to remember that I was smart only because of them.
Good question from Jennifer Adema from the University of Hawaii for Ms. Gilani. One area the elders have worked in repeatedly is the Israel-Gaza-Palestine conflict. With so much going on right now and with such a painful, terrible history of conflict, what are some of the strategic approaches you use to try to restore peace in the region?
I mean, I've answered that question so many times that it's almost become like a visit to the zoo. And I say that I started writing in first grade and kept repeating till the 12th. I feel very, very, very strongly about this conflict. I feel very strongly for the people who are caught into this conflict. I know that there are people on both sides who have suffered. However, I also know from my own visit to Gaza and having spoken to many people who are working for the rights of the Palestinians, that the capacity to harm on one side is much greater than that on the other. My own strategy, if I had any say in it, would be to bring about a consensus on the immediate need for the end of occupation. Because where it harms the Palestinians, it does even more harm to the Israeli psyche and what the Israeli people feel about themselves. And that's something that we've all seen. Secondly, I would expect the international community to help both the Israelis and the Palestinians to understand that they have to have a formula for coexistence. You can't move away, neither of them can. But a coexistence that either is of a nature where they don't have anything to do with each other for some time, because they can't be immediately good friends or good neighbors. And I've learned that because I live next to India, which is, we are the same people. We are absolutely the same people. And yet we found it difficult for 60 years to work out our differences. Thirdly, I think it's very important for people to understand that there is no way that we can believe that a Palestinian state will not come about. It will. It will be in the interest of global peace that there be a viable Palestinian state. And therefore, the question of settlements, to speak very honestly and openly, has to be resolved. A Palestine that is moth-eaten without any contiguity with its different territories will not bring peace for anyone. It will remain a problem for the world and for the region.
Thank you. This is from Twitter. Prime Minister, what's the biggest advancement toward peace in the last 20 years?
Wow. Yeah, what is it? Well, you know, in the last nearly 15 years at least, the Millennium Development Goals have been a common understanding and commitment across the world to overcome crucial needs of people across the world in developing nations. And what has happened is that we have had great improvements in child mortality, in infectious diseases, in the vaccination of children. We have had improvements in education for girls. All of these achievements really are movements towards a greater potential for peace.
Thank you. Thoughtful answer. Archbishop, we have several questions along this line. A number of people would like some tips to parents on ways to keep peace in their families, to help their children learn how to be caring and compassionate. Very practical tips.
To keep peace.
Because you have some experience.
I'll tell you, an African man such as I am, for a long time believed that mine should be the last word. Then we went to England. I was going to study at King's College. And Leah and I said we want our children to participate in our discussions at table. And I have to tell you that it was a great agony for an African man to be told by your 4 or 5-year-old, "No, Diddy, you are wrong." Oh, no, that is even more polite. That's stupid. That's stupid. I mean, I had to count up to, well, 5. But it is actually, you discovered, I mean, when you say that each one of us in the family are persons with points of view. Of course, you want to guide them by having, as it were, lines within which they operate. And I think, I mean, that helped very much. I mean, just as a small example, I was working for the World Council of Churches, and we lived in London. And our children were going to very good schools in London. And then out of the blue, I got a letter from the Bishop of Johannesburg saying, can you come back to become Dean of Johannesburg? And we did what we had been growing into with Leah. We were sitting around a dinner table, and I said, I've got this invitation. What do you say? And each one of the children participated in that. And all four of the children said, yes, go. We should go back to South Africa. The only person was my wife, who was very, very upset that she knew now that if we went back, the children would not have schools in South Africa that they could attend. They had to go and board in Swaziland. In London, we were buying a house. In South Africa, we didn't have the right to be able to buy a house. But yeah, yes. And we went home. And I think, I mean, it's amazing actually what children can be when, and I think many of you have experienced that.
So when you listen,
Yeah.
when you give them a voice and you listen.
Yeah, we tried to.
Thank you. Here's a question from Ramona Chin for Ms. Gilani. How can we as American women support women's advancement in developing countries?
I think that's an admirable wish, but I think women all over the world must understand that there are injustices around them as well where women are concerned. Violence against women is a universal phenomenon. It is through our own national struggles that we learn how to help others. It's not the status of being developing that make women vulnerable to discrimination, to inequality, and to violence. So I think that's one thing that I want to clarify first. Secondly, how do you help each other? And from my own personal experience, and I was talking about this over lunch this afternoon, wherever women are in trouble, we must raise our voice and never hesitate to help and to bring pressure, especially where women living in environments where there are no freedoms available to them, to be able to mobilize public opinion to support their causes in their own countries. International public opinion, I can tell you, has saved my life many times. And my imprisonment at certain times has ended, not because the rulers wanted to do it, but because there was too much pressure, not just coming from foreign leaders, but coming from women in foreign countries and women's organizations.
Prime Minister, this has your name on it with all your work in environment and sustainability. Question is from Twitter: how will the impacts of climate change affect the future ability to achieve peace?
Well, you know, it is interesting that maybe now 10 years ago, the Nobel Peace Prize Committee gave the Peace Prize to Wangari Maathai of Kenya. She was a woman who had mobilized others to plant trees and to take action to promote the environment. And the Nobel Committee, of course, was well prepared to argue that saving the environment and taking care of avoiding climate change is part of action for peace. They were prepared, but there was a lot of criticism because the definition, the traditional definition of peace, was, in the arena of people working against armaments or speaking out against war. But the fact of the matter is, unless we, as a human family, can live together and also take care of the planet, then the fundament for peace will not be there. So I think, it illustrated that the Nobel Peace Committee had understood the broad linkages between the different aspects that can lead to peace.
And broaden the definition of justice at the same time.
Absolutely.
Somebody wants to drill down on a question asked earlier. Archbishop, this is for you. It's a lifestyle question. How can we practice peace in our everyday lives, every day?
Well, I think that there are various things that we could be doing. One of the interesting bits of the Bible is the part where, when Adam and Eve disobey God, they get turfed out of paradise. But one of the interesting things in the description is the fact that they say the ground now brings forth thistles, weeds, where previously it brought up crops and fruit. That our sinfulness or the wrongs that we do are things that spread out. I mean, like waves. And when I do good, when you do good, it is not just an individual thing. It is you, and it's waves that go out and out and out to touch so very many aspects. And so be at peace with yourself. Would it be a good thing to say to all of us that it would be a wonderful thing to start our day, if we didn't, to have a moment of reflection, a moment when you try to be at peace, you, and breathe in God's good air. Breathe in goodness and breathing out the wrong. And be at peace with yourself and with your children and husband, and the waves go out and out and out.
Archbishop, you said something Friday in a talk about ethical leadership that we are all here, and I want to ask the Prime Minister and Ms. Giuliani to weigh in on it. What you said was you're talking about the growth, your professional development as a leader, and what was one of the harder things for you, and you said you didn't really intend to go into something that made you hate it. And we tend to think of them as beloved figures, right? But you've each gone through such hate as well. And I just want to ask each of you, Ms. Giuliani and Prime Minister, how does that sit with you? How do you sit in a position of being hated for cause or without cause? Whether you do something or whether you don't. Prime Minister?
Well, when I then became the first woman as prime minister in Norway, it was clear that this was new. It was seen by many to be radical, back in 1981. And people who didn't share my party's views and my way, my vision, and my social democratic views, they were using the fact that I was a woman to try to attack my party and what I stood for. Because this was new. There were sufficient people not ready to immediately accept a new way of thinking about the role of men and women. So I had quite terrible types of attacks in that first election campaign in 1981, which were personal and which were discriminatory against the fact that I was a woman who was a leader. Now, that was tough, and my mother, who in fact worked with me, she said, "Gro, why are you taking all this terrible situation? Why do you need to continue doing this difficult work?" I said, "Look, if I step down now and get, affected in such a way that I cannot be positive and continue doing my political role, what have I then done to the equality between the sexes in Norway? I must be able to stand this, because next time a woman is a leader in Norway, she will not have to experience the same thing." And by the way, not always can you be grateful to see that what you said is true. But I now know, because last year, for the second time, a woman became prime minister in Norway. And she happens to be a conservative. However, I know and I see that she is not being met with the things that I met a generation ago. So I was right. If you stand it and if you continue fighting for what you believe in, change happens. And now we have overcome that kind of barrier to also women being full leaders.
So you could look down the road and say, this is where I'm going.
It was right. Yeah.
Miss Julani, you mentioned imprisonment. You have taken way more than your share of shots. How do you handle it?
Well, let me share a secret with you. I must be, I'm sure, the only person in the world who gained weight in prison.
Gained weight.
Oh. The practice in our country is that when you are sent to prison, you are weighed and on your entrance, and then weighed when you are released. When I was released, not only I was embarrassed to know, but all my other friends who had gone to jail with me, and we were all released at the same time, they looked at me very, in a very embarrassed way and accusatory way, because the superintendent of jail looked up at me and said, "You've gained 5 pounds." But why I had gained it was not because I didn't see the pain of imprisonment, because the people with whom I was imprisoned were such good company that I still look very fondly at that time in prison. I've been there more than once, but this particular time I really look back at. It was great fun. So my advice always has been, when you have to go to prison, choose the company first.
Okay, but what about the really hard road you've traveled?
Now, you were talking about hate. Mm-hmm. And I've always thought about it and said to myself, look, I don't care if I'm popular or not.
Truly?
Truly, truly. I mean, of course, I want the causes to become more popular and that people should be persuaded to support those causes and change behavior so that certain human rights values can be upheld. But the fact is that, you know, in human rights work, you're working for the rights of minorities. All our societies are not very benign. The majority may be very prejudiced and strongly motivated to harm minorities. So I have been hated by a lot of people for many things that I have done in my life. The point is, there are those that also encourage you to know that what you're doing is good. I mean, I've been shot at, I have been abused. For telling the truth, especially in my international work, doing commissions of inquiries, when you find a report, some side or the other wants to accuse you and discredit you. So there are these things that we do, but if that was something that in any way made me stop, I couldn't do it. So I think it's an element, but my own family, I think, is also important. You look towards your family sometimes to confirm and verify, am I right? Am I doing something that's you know, worth it? My family, for instance, has taken a lot of flack for what I do. Part of my family was taken hostage once when some people came in, some extremist elements came into my house to kill me. I wasn't there, but my family was, and they took them hostage, 3- and 4-year-old children as well. The result was they had to leave the country because of that. But the point is that because they were willing to do that and have never stopped me for doing what I do, and in fact have encouraged me to go on doing it, has given me the capacity to bear the hate as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who would like to take this question on. It's a good question from Facebook. Can you tell us how you've managed difficult conversations with world leaders who violated human rights?
You know, you can speak about difficult and controversial issues if you have had a polite start, if you have spoken with them about issues that are of common concern, and that they feel kind of relaxed in your presence, then you can raise difficult issues and just do it. And sometimes they can get surprised because their staff didn't tell them that this prime minister was going to be so rude that she would raise a human rights issue or somebody that had been imprisoned, you know. But I've done this several times, and it is a successful method. Just say what's on your mind, but don't abruptly do it the moment you come into the door. Then you are able.
It sounds kind of like a difficult HR conversation, but we're talking a version of evil playing out on a national or international stage. Did you get results from these difficult conversations?
Yes.
For example, can you tell us?
No.
Can you not name names, but just
No, this is the point. I mean, I can't do that, you know? But I'm talking about leaders of major countries east of Norway.
very delicate.
Oh, that's very good.
Any other thoughts about this question? How do you have these difficult conversations with world leaders who are violating other people's rights in a massive way?
Look at us. We talk to our leaders. They're violating our rights all the time at the national level. Like I said, these are engagements that you have to be doing. If I work in prisons, I can't get access unless I talk to the government. This is a question that I was once asked by the Secretary General of the United Nations, who was interviewing me for a position, saying, "You're a human rights defender. Would you be able to conduct diplomatic conversations with world leaders?" I said, "What do you think I've been doing all my life?"
Yeah. Now tell me, when in your personal lives, do you approach difficult conversations? Or do you say, well, hey, I do that for a living. I ain't gonna talk to my family like that. Somebody else can handle that.
Frankly, sometimes I do. I try and avoid it.
You get enough of it on the world stage. How about you, Prime Minister?
You mean saying things that are not popular?
Having a really tough conversation with a family member who is, pretty intractable, big problem.
Well, you just have to do that.
Yeah. What about you, Archbishop?
I am actually not a confrontationist.
Did you hear somebody?
Really,
I don't think it's working. We're not believing that.
No. My natural
Shyness.
Grow. I've been nice to you.
Yes.
He needs to have a difficult conversation with you right now.
But I'm just thinking of a particular conversation we had with, it's not a world leader, but he was the president of South Africa in the apartheid days. And I'd gone to him to try to plead for 6 people who were going to be hanged. And it was out of a political situation. They'd been in an unrest situation. And our conversation had sort of 2 levels. When I arrived and I spoke about these people, he was so amicable and friendly. And then he suddenly changed gears and said, "You, just look at you." And he produced a photograph and said I'd been marching under a communist flag at a funeral. We used to have these massive funerals. And I said, "You know what? I was not even at that funeral." And he said, and I said, look here, man. Don't talk to me as if you're talking to a small boy. And I said, "I take exception to what you are saying." He said to me, "Take your exception and go." But I said, as I went out and I was with my chaplain, I said, "I don't think that's how Jesus would have handled that situation, but I'm glad I was speaking for our people. They've treated us like dirt." And I knew in that moment when I confronted him that to some extent he would get to know that we were not just rubbish, that our people mattered. But I didn't do that too frequently.
It's time for our last question. It's time has gone by very quickly. I'd like to ask each of you to answer the same one as we started off doing. The business of peace is a very gritty business. And a just and inclusive global community is such a lofty goal. I don't even know if it's a goal that you really have, that we have a just and inclusive global community. Do you think it's possible? And if so, how will it be achieved and when? Ms. Gilani?
I don't think that we'll ever have a just world, so to speak. But if we have standards that indicate what justice is and are able then to create mechanisms to bring about justice in accordance with those standards, I think that would satisfy me. So that, when injustice happens, we have something to deal with it. Not expecting that injustice will never happen. It will.
Will it happen in your lifetime?
It is already happening. I've always felt that we have gone a long way. What we need to learn now is not to be shy of using the methods that we have created for international justice.
Thank you. Archbishop?
I would want to say to you, it is an article of faith. God has said, I give you this world. This is your home. And as long as you remember that you are family, you will achieve it. That is God's dream. And I think, that it is achievable. It is achievable. We didn't think that slavery could be abolished. It was almost universal. But it's happened. We didn't think that women would, in many parts now, come to be recognized as equals with their male counterparts. It's happening. We didn't think that we would see the day when a Nelson Mandela walked out of prison. It's happened. And yeah, it is perhaps utopian. Why not? Why not? Mm-hmm.
Prime Minister, possible, and if so, when and how?
Yeah, well, in my lifetime, many positive things have happened. The world is a better place today than 65 years ago when I started independent thinking, 65 years, it's 2 generations and more, and many positive things have happened, just like my 2 colleagues have now said. So I think we should remain determined that change happens, will continue to happen, if we decide it should. And if all of us give a voice, use whatever opportunity we have, it may be different, because each one of us are in different places. But we can all contribute to a process that basically, although there are many bad things remaining, basically is moving in the right direction. So I believe that, yes, the goal is not elusive and impossible. It can be done.
Unrelenting optimism and realism, too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't like the word optimism.
Why not?
No, because optimism is, in fact, a fly-by-night. It's to be realistic. And I say I am a prisoner of hope.
Point taken. Thank you so much. And I think all of us here want to thank you so much for this time you've spent with us. We've enjoyed it and learned from it. You know, there's a proverb that says, walk in the company of the wise and become wise. We've sat with you for a bit, and I think you've put a jog in our step, and thank you for the wisdom you've shared with us.
Thank you to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Not leaving yet. Have a seat. Thank you, Leslie, for moderating, and thank you to our elders. We're not done thanking you yet, though. We have another special presentation for you, so please feel free to stay seated. Of course, the greatest way we can honor what has happened here today is to embrace their knowledge and live our lives as part of the global community. And it is the hope of the organizers of this event that each of us is inspired today by the experience and how we can become a pillar of peace in our own lives and in our communities. Your aloha is your gift to your family, your friends, to Hawaii, and to the world. Now, during their 3-day visit, they have encompassed over 8 public and private events, interacted with student leaders and private citizens, and their messages from the events today and yesterday have reached audience throughout the world through live stream webcasts. We'd also like to just take a moment before our closing ceremony to recognize the leaders of the Elders Organization that have joined us for this visit as well. Leslie Ann Knight, CEO of the Elders, over on this side, and Jennifer Woodside, Communications Director for the Elders. Please remain seated with us. We will now begin the closing ceremony to express our thanks and appreciation to the elders for sharing so much with us today. We start with a gift presentation to the elders, and we will end with a special hula kahiko. Please welcome to the stage, once again, the hosts and supporters of Pillars of Peace Hawaii. They made this all possible. Pierre and Pam Omidyar and Kelvin Takeda. And Pam is going to explain the gift that we're about to present to the elders.
Thank you. The lei is an expression of love, affection, respect, and honor. Most often we use it as a way to welcome people, but in Hawaiian traditions, it is also given with a feeling of deep compassion. There's a Hawaiian saying, "E lei no au, I ko aloha," and this translates to, "I will wear your love as a wreath." The oli or chant that will be sung while presenting the feather lei gift to the elders is often chanted while hula dancers prepare for their performance by tying lei around their ankles, wrists, head, and neck. This oli helps prepare performers by enhancing their thoughts of peace and calm. So we give these special feather lei to you, dear elders, with much gratitude for your visit, and as you continue your journeys of spreading the message of peace, Ubuntu, and aloha around the world. Thank you.
Yeah.
As we continue in our closing ceremony, it is now my pleasure to introduce our closing performance. Aya I Ni'ihau Ku'u Pavehe is a traditional mele that speaks of love, natural beauty, and a harmonious balance of human relationship relative to the environment. This mele is a hula kalalau that traces to Akoni Mika being the credited historic choreographer. The dance creates a captivating experience, whereas there are both performers standing and others sitting. The words are chanted by the men, and they are adorned with replicated moena pavehe. This is the plaited mat and native shell lay, both famed artistry of the Ni'ihau people. Now please join me in welcoming this year's Merry Monarch winners. Oh, that was the explanation of what they just did. My apology. I thought we were going to have a hana ho. Sorry about that. So we thank them again. Oh, I just was happy to get through all the Hawaiian words in that read. Thank you again to the elders. We have so enjoyed our presentations to you and the gifts that you've given to us today. How about another round of applause for a just and inclusive global community?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please remain seated as the elders exit the theater.